another one. Oh, I'm picking a fun one. I'm going to pick kind of a fun pattern. This is a fun little funny thing. This is supposed to be a keychain. This was the front of the keychain, and that was the back of the keychain. But I still had to use my basic principles. And let's go to his robe. And you can see I always have my light source coming from the upper right hand corner, or kind of in front, maybe a little bit in front. So I always have to work with a light source coming from here. Now I don't have to, but I choose to because it's easier for the students to follow at this level of their learning. And you can see how the light here and the dark and this little cool color down here kind of makes it look like this is kind of going around. Well, I've used the same principle here. Light to medium to dark, and with a little cool color here. And his face is just a fun little face. It's strictly designed. But you can see, you have to, let's look at the back of his head, because you can see that this is really like a ball. We're just really painting a ball, because this is in the reverse side. My light source is coming from here. So you can see how the lightest part of his head, which is basically a ball, is kind of right here, and there it fades away. So I'm thinking form at this point. As I paint his head, I'm thinking a ball. Well, we get into texture a little bit over here, and I have to figure out how to paint the fur of this little funny little cat. But I still have to keep my basic shape in mind. And when you're painting anything, you always start with a basic shape. Like we started with a ball here. I'm putting him in kind of a cone type here, and I have to think, well, my light's coming from here, so I have a light, medium, and dark, and a turning color here to kind of make it look like it turns. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's one of the things that you always have to think about in each instance. Okay, we'll just pick this one up on top. It seems to want to be just laying there looking at me. This is really a warm picture, and the hardest thing to paint is something like a yellow pear and a brass bow. It's all one color. What do? You have to make up colors as an artist. So I've chosen, because the pear is a warm color, I've chosen to make a turning color, a cool color, and more or less of a purple here, and more or less of a green here. You have to use warm and cool to make anything look like it turns. Now we look at the form, and you see, I see this is basically a ball, and this is basically a cone turned on its side. So I have to paint it with my light source coming from here as light here, and goes into my medium value, into my dark value, and back into my medium value. But I'm first thinking of it as a form, and if I know how to paint a ball, then I can pretty well paint this as the light hits it. If I paint this, I'm thinking of a cone, and I can paint that as the light hits it.
That's got a good example of shadow on that middle pear, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and I always love to put shadows in. I think they add a lot, and that's something you really have to study. If you really study, put two pears together, or put two eggs together, and a real strong flashlight. Turn out all the lights in your house and put two things together, and see if you can see this nice line on something, whatever you're using, because that's a cast shadow. And a shadow is just not all dark. You can see that there's dark, medium, and light in that shadow. Shadows are very interesting. Reflections are very interesting. This brass pan had reflections. It also has shadows, but it also has reflections. And a good way to study reflections is to put some pears on a mirror, and then you can really see how it reflects. They do not parrot the object above, nor does a shadow, because this is a round object, nor does the shadow parrot the object from which it falls. The shadow parrots the object on which it falls. So you can see that this pear goes around like this, curves around like that. That shadow goes around. Shadows are awfully fun to study. Not only that, shadows have halos, and I doubt if you can see the halo down here, but Just put a pencil on over a piece of paper, and you can see there's a halo. There's a dark area, and then there's a halo. Well, I don't want to talk about roses just yet, but I